Welcome, everyone, to our post-draft Eagles Intel show. I'm Adam Caplan. He's Andrew DiCecco. This is Inside the Birds. We're going to go over not only rounds 4 through 7, but give intel on every player as we know it, as we speak here Saturday evening. We are presented by Ocean Casino Resort, the official Jersey Shore Casino Resort sponsor of Inside the Birds. And Andrew, here we are. We finally got through it. It was a very interesting draft. We had the wildness of round one, the drop of Quinyon Mitchell, which made very little sense, but hey, they got him. Somehow the Eagles didn't trade up, which was shocking. With the Michael Penix situation, before we get started, I got to ask you something. I know we're doing rounds 4 through 7, but you and I haven't spoken since really beginning the draft. What were your thoughts when Penix went at number 8?
I thought that was good news for the Eagles and any team looking to get one of those corners
Right.
because obviously teams are going to start reaching for quarterbacks after that happened, and that pushed a lot of talent down the board. J.C. Latham, by the way, going at 7 was something a little bit unforeseen, at least for me. I thought that was a little early, but as it were, there were some premium cornerbacks sitting there when the Eagles were on the clock. Got to give Howie Roseman credit for playing the board and being patient and not being over aggressive and not having to give up any assets to get Quinyon Mitchell.
No doubt, no doubt. Didn't round one also, and this plays what you're talking about with the quarterbacks going way up there. There were 6 taken within the top 14. Did you think that we would not see a defensive player until 15? That was also surprising.
Yeah, if you remember when we did our mock draft at 8, I had the Falcons taking Byron Murphy. That could have been Dallas Turner. That could have been Laiatu Latu. Either way, I thought that they were primed to take a defensive player. So not to see one off the board, Adam, until 15, that was unforeseen. And that kind of tells you how the league viewed the defensive prospects in this class.
All right, so you can hear Andrew and Jeff Mosher if you want to go back and review our draft coverage. Andrew and Jeff did day 1. They did day 2. You and I, Andrew, are doing day 3 here, around 4 through 7. And also, you can check those interviews we did with Greg Cosell pre-draft. In fact, our last one was day of the draft, where we did talk and update Jalix Hunt. We asked Greg to take a look at him. He did. He sure did. We'll talk more about that going forward. And he gave great intel on Quinyon Mitchell, how he would fit. Cooper DeJean, we also talked about with Greg. So you can check out those interviews on our YouTube channel or on any podcasting platform. So, Andrew, let's get started. So in rounds 4 through 7, they had 6 players. They drafted 6 players. They actually wound up having 9 selections instead of 8. They started the draft off with 8. They also added 3 picks for next year in rounds 3 through 5. So now they have 9 picks next year. So as you were talking about, Howie Roseman, the GM, working the board. Look, he didn't do it in round 1, which is stunning, but we missed on that part. Well, I mean, I'll be admitted, we thought they'd have to get Mitchell by trading up. They didn't, which is like the upset of the draft.
Yeah.
With Howie not trading up, I mean, he had to be restrained probably. But anyway, so they did it. So let's take an overview. And I know you and Jeff, we don't have to rehash or go over every pick from the first couple of rounds, but now that the draft is over, they've got 9 picks. How do you think Howie did overall?
I thought he did really well. I thought you saw 2 sides of Howie Roseman, Adam. You saw the aggressive side, trading up over Green Bay to ensure you're getting Cooper DeJean, who the Eagles had a first round grade on. And then you saw him being patient, letting the board come to him and grab the top rated corner, the consensus top rated corner in Quinyon Mitchell. That's a home run. Jalix Hunt is a player who I've mentioned over the past few weeks. He had a 30 visit with the Eagles. There's obvious interest there. When they kept trading down, I sort of had a 3rd round grade on him, and it started to trend towards that. As soon as I saw that they were going back at 86 and then they were going 94, I said, that's either Mo Kamara or that's going to be Jalix Hunt. Jalix Hunt was the pick. So he's a little bit more of a project, but really, really explosive player, intriguing traits. And then on day 3, I thought they did some good things by adding a couple wide receivers and a couple developmental offensive linemen that could fill out some depth, which they lost in Sue Opeta and Jack Driscoll, by the way. And yeah, I mean, I thought it was an overall really solid haul for the Birds.
Did you think that, okay, let's turn our attention now, rounds 4 through 7, where they drafted 6 players, 1 in the 4th, 3 in the 5th, and 2 in the 6th. They didn't have a 7th. Did you feel good about the value of those players? And we'll break those down for you and give our early intel. Did you think that that they took the correct values on those players?
Not on Will Shipley. I wasn't crazy about the Will Shipley pick.
Okay.
I thought that there were better options that you probably could have found and further down the board. I was a big Isaac Garendo from Louisville. I liked him a lot. I like Isaiah Davis from South Dakota State, who went later. I think Will Shipley's a good complementary player. He can move him around a little bit, athletic, has some good speed, but he does have a fumbling issue. And I just thought for where they took him was a little bit rich. But Ainias Smith, loved that pick. Loved the Johnny Wilson pick. Johnny Wilson, to me, I see him through the lens of a athletic move tight end. He's just shy of 240. I think he offers some intriguing intangibles and traits that you can kind of work with playing at the highest level of college football. I think Kellen Moore's going to be able to work with that. Then the linemen I really like. They got some good interior linemen. I think Jeff Statland's going to be able to hone their skill set and have them as cost-effective pieces for the future.
All right, let's get started. So let's get to the fourth round pick. They had one. That was Will Shipley. Yeah, I know it's funny because Shipley said he was told rounds 3 through 5. What I was told is round 4 through 6 by
yeah, me too.
So a bunch of people. So hey, look, they took him. You and I saw him during Senior Bowl week. All right, let's break him down here. So your overview of Will Shipley as a football player and what he could add to the Eagles offense.
Well, he's a movable player who's really going to be a good outlet for Jalen Hurts. Now, the Eagles have not really tapped into that element of their offense, but that's what he's really here to do. I think that he does have a fumbling issue, and you worry about his ability to, I would say, hold up. I think he's more of a complementary change of pace option, but if they use him correctly, Adam, he can add a new dimension to the offense that they don't currently have. He's surprisingly tough between the tackles, I thought, for being 5'11", 205. But like I said, I thought that was probably a little bit early given some of the other needs and maybe some of the other running backs that were available.
So when you look at the Eagles situation at running back now, it's Barkley, it's Gainwell. Gainwell's the 2. The third job is open between Shipley, Lou Nichols, who's kind of a long shot, but they like his size, who was drafted by the Packers, and Ty Davis-Price was the third rounder for the Niners. They gave some decent guaranteed money to. So, and don't forget, Gainwell's contract's up after the season. So the long-term backup for Barkley, that is unsettled, but right now it's clearly Gainwell. And as you mentioned, Shipley could give them help on third down. Now, any feeling on his ability to block as a passing down back if need be?
It's a work in progress. He's a willing pass protector, but I think that's going to obviously need some work. Look, the player scored 33 touchdowns in 36 games. He has a nose for the end zone. He's someone that's obviously played in a lot of big games. So you like the pedigree there. I just think that maybe a little bit similar to Gainwell. I think he's a better pass catcher, and he could probably line him up in different places, and he could be a little bit more explosive than Gainwell. But we'll have to see.
All right, let's roll over to the 5th round where they had 3 picks. I keep saying Ainias Williams. Is it pronounced Ainias? How do
Anias, yeah.
Okay, Ainias Smith, a receiver from Texas A&M. At the combine, we'll give you his combine measurables here.
29-inch arms.
Yep, 5'9" and 3/8, 190, which is not bad. Arm length is 29, which is not really long. Hand size is 8.5. Boy, this is interesting. Andrew, his bench was 21, so he obviously is pretty strong. Holy smokes.
Yeah, he plays a lot bigger. He plays a lot bigger than his billing, Adam.
All right.
He's not what I would call a technically refined route runner, but he's really good in space. He's a willing blocker. He's physical after the catch. And I think he plays a blue-collar style of football that fans are really going to resonate with. And I think that he can provide a little bit more than what on the surface it may look like he might be a special teams returner. He can return kicks and punts, but I think he can be someone who can step in and give you some quality production on short to intermediate routes out of the slot. He had 53 receptions last year. I don't know that he's going to kind of take on that role, that full ownership of that role, but he can certainly be a piece and for Kellen Moore to work with and build around.
All right, and we'll get to Johnny Wilson in a second, but behind. See, this is the interesting part. The draft is about the future. So Parker and Campbell are on 1-year deals. Past this season, they have no one has been developed. Britton Covey is a slot only, and he's really their punt returner. I don't know if he'll even line up at a receiver anymore. Jacob Harris, I know they want to look at. Austin Watkins. Didn't you have something on Griffin Hebert months ago, if I'm not mistaken? Or know
Yeah,
something about
I
him?
did. So they want him to learn the outside position first. They want him to be a wide receiver and get down to 225. He was a former tight end in college, and then they also want him to learn cross train him in the slot. That's
Okay.
kind of how they see him. So he's going to be with the receivers through camp and competing for a job there as well. So we'll have to see.
Interesting.
It's a crowded room all of a sudden.
Yeah, of a bunch of like number 5 and number 6 receivers. But you know
Yeah.
what? You need those guys for the future because the two veteran backups are on 1-year deals, and what looks to be deep backups, these guys could be factors if they can not only make the team but actually show that they could contribute. So as the fifth round progressed, the second of their 3 fifth rounders, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who out of Clemson, who's also an inside backer, much smaller than his dad. So Andrew, let's get involved here with this position. They have so many guys this year, and we know that they have a bunch of guys with 1-year deals. And you have to look forward past this season. Only Dean is signed, and by the way, Dean somehow will be on the final year of his rookie deal in 2025. Where's time gone? Ben Van Sumeren. When you look at it, Oren Burks is up, White's up, Zach Bond is up. So yeah, I know that they have a crowded room, but it's always about the future. So let's get to it. Your thoughts on Trotter and what he can do for this football team?
Well, I wasn't really high on the player where many were sort of slotting him, at least in mock drafts. I was very much
Sure.
against that. I saw him more as a third or fourth round pick. Where the Eagles got him, it's hard to dispute that. I think you have to take a flyer on a player like that. He has the pedigree, he has college production. However, Adam, he's undersized. He's just under 6'1". He's about 220. He's not very fast, so he doesn't move well laterally, and you worry
Mm.
about his ability to cover tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. And he takes some pretty poor pursuits to ball carriers. If you watch a lot of his tape, he doesn't have the makeup speed. So if they get past him, he's always in pursuit and sort of chasing after, and he doesn't have the speed in which to do that. So I kind of view him as a situational player at best, a special teams contributor, but he's a limited player, and that's why I thought it was really telling when on day 3 you saw a lot of other linebackers that were getting taken over him. That tells you kind of how the league views it. Now, like I said, where the Eagles took him, it's kind of hard to argue that's pretty good value.
Yeah, at the combine, 6 feet, 228 pounds, which is certainly undersized. And we'll see if he can make the team. As you said, if he does, he'll be on special teams. But they have a crowded room. But again, for the future, they don't have a lot of guys under contract. This year, they have a
Right.
bunch of them, and literally right now, they have a minimum of 6 and maybe 7 guys who could try vie for roster spot, and they only play 2 at a time. So in the 34 front that Vic Fangio is going to play. Now to round out this fifth round is a guy that I've heard a little bit about, Trevor Keegan, a guard who's an interior lineman who could play center or guard, but he's really a guard from what I understand. So what are your thoughts on Trevor Keegan and his possibility of making this team?
Yeah, 3-year starter, disciplined player. I don't even believe he gave up a sack last season, so he's played in a lot of big games. He's tough, not exactly as fluid or explosive as some of the other linemen that the Eagles have sort of coveted and the Jeff Stoutland prototype. But you look at the experience, the the discipline, and he's more of a technician. He's more of a technical type of lineman. So I think having that can kind of fill in that Sua Opeta role. I think he can play both guard spots. 6'5", 310. You like his size there. I mean, I really like that pick. He's a nasty player.
When you look at the situation here, and you mentioned Suapeta, remember Jack Driscoll signs with the Dolphins. Right now, if you just look at their situation, Matt Hennessy is the veteran. He's the top backup center guard. After that, you just don't have anybody. So I really Brett Toth could play a bunch of positions, but he's really not played at all. Raven Clark can play guard if needed. He has done it, but he's really a tackle. We know they want to look at Darian Kennard, a former draftee of the Chiefs, to play guard. He could play tackle, but he's more of a guard. But they just don't have any experience. So yeah, wow. I mean, Keegan not only will he have a good chance to make the team, and who knows, he could be one of their top backups. So we'll see how that develops. And those are the first 4 picks of day 3 and the 3 fifth rounders. And then one of my favorite picks is a guy that we know they had him in for a pre-draft visit, who they liked. the term jumbo receiver, it doesn't give him justice. You and I saw him at the Senior Bowl. I'm a little surprised at how well he moved. I had not seen him obviously in person before. I know a receivers coach that I've known for many years said he really wanted this player, and he texted me, he goes, "Man, I wish we would have gotten him instead of Philly." So, what are your thoughts on Johnny Wilson out of Florida State?
Probably my favorite pick of the day, to be honest with you. I
Okay.
6'7", 237. I view him more through the lens of a move tight end, an athletic one at that. You like his catch radius, you like his body control. He's going to high point the football, and I think you can move him around and create all different types of mismatches. Kellen Moore gets a new toy to work with. I think he's just scratching the surface of what he's able to do, Adam. And he's not as stiff as what maybe you would think from a receiver with that kind of size. He moves pretty well and can get vertical on you as well and work the seams a little bit.
Hmm. At the combine, 6'6" and 3/8, 231. Listen to this arm length, 35 and 3/8. Wingspan, 84 and a half, Andrew. Hand size, 10. You ran a very respectable 4.52. When you get in the six, if he runs a 4.65 to 4.7, he's a tight end. So that's good. As you said, he runs well in open space. Very intriguing receiver. I find this very interesting. By the way, his vertical is 37, not bad for a guy his size.
No.
I find it interesting. If you look at the size of these guys, your guy, Griffin Hebert, is it Hebert or Bear?
I think I say Hebert.
Okay, got it. So Griffin Hebert, Joe Ngata, who's a jumbo receiver, Jacob Harris, jumbo receiver, who's played tight end and an H-back, who was a draftee of the Rams, who tore his ACL 3 years ago and is trying to build his way back, but he's healthy. The Eagles gave some guaranteed money to. Devontae Parker is a big receiver. Isn't it interesting? If you look at their backup receivers, a lot of them have size for a change.
Yeah, and then you have Ainias Smith at 5'9", so he's the outlier, but
Yeah.
he brings a different skill set to the table. But yeah, I think it's really interesting when you see a lot of the big body above the rim type of receivers that can go up and get it. We'll have to see how they play out. It could come down to who's able to contribute on special teams, because if all things are equal, that's what's going to come down to.
All right, and the final pick in the 6th round, another interior lineman, Dylan McMahon out of NC State. What are your feelings on this player?
I like the player. He's played a lot of football, but he's a little bit undersized. So he played guard and center in college, but he's going to be a pure center at the pro level, at least in my estimation, Adam. I think they need to add a backup center and someone who's played a lot of football. Maybe you're able to work his skill set. You're able to develop a little bit. Look, these are the guys you take flyers on. You try to get cost-effective depth, and hopefully you work with Jeff Stoutland gets his hands on them, and he's able to work around, develop them a little bit. Every time the Eagles have gotten young linemen, whether it be on the practice squad or whether it be Sua Pet or Jack Driscoll, they've always been in high demand. Work with Stoutland, that's kind of what happens.
Dylan McMahon at the combine, 6'3" and 3/8, 299. So to your point, he's undersized. That bill seemed to me would be guard, 31 3/4 inch arms, wingspan 75 and an eighth, hand size decent at 9 and 3/8. But now they addressed it. See, here's the thing: they did address the potential of a backup center, backup guard for the future. They need to replace those guys, Apetta and Driscoll. And then Hennessy's the one veteran, but to your point, they still could use one more veteran, a swing offensive lineman, a guard, tackle. We'll see. Look, Hennessy's going to be that backup center. That's pretty much what we know going on here. But
I'll also say this, Adam. We all know that free agency doesn't just end and the draft doesn't. Nope. You know what I mean? You can still go and alter the roster all the way through August. But I came away out of this weekend thinking the Eagles think pretty highly of Tyler Steen. They did not go out of their way to add a tackle with guard versatility or anything like that. So I think that kind of speaks to maybe the confidence that they have in him behind the scenes, what Jeff Stoutland's seen in him in terms of development. Maybe he said, hey, look, I think we got something to work with here. We still have a long ways to go, but I think right now that was kind of telling.
Yeah, because when you really look at it, the only veteran backup guard center is Hennessy. The backup tackles are Fred Johnson, who's definitely Mailata's backup. There's no question. He has starting experience. And the Raven Clark, and that's it. Yeah, so I know Brett Toth is technically a veteran, but he really hasn't played very much football. So, yeah, they have some work to do. And you're right. I'm glad you mentioned that because free agency is not done. It really goes through the season technically, but obviously you want to get anything done before the season starts and before you set your initial 53 in early September. So let's take a look at this. The draft is done. Just as an overview, what do you think of this Eagles roster? They're 53 right now.
Well, by and large, I think it's pretty solid. But I will say they have to address the backup tight end spot. They have to get more, I think, a proven player as far as depth to complement Matt Hennessy and give them a boost on the offensive line, knowing how important that is and critical to the Eagles' success. And then I think they could probably stand to add another linebacker. They don't really have anyone who can be deemed the head of the class there. They didn't address it in the draft really in any real way outside of the 5th round. But and veteran defensive tackle. You, me, and Jeff have all talked about this, that they could probably stand to use a veteran defensive tackle to complement that really young room, and which is they have a couple of unproven players who are the foundational building blocks of that defensive line right
Yeah, so let's this is our last segment here, so let's go over what you just said because there's a lot to unpack. So at defensive tackle, they don't have a vested veteran actually on the roster. That's incredible. That's very rare. It's nice that they have a lot of young kids. That's great that they're all going to play. Milton Williams on the final year of his deal. We know he can play end. Davis and Carter, your starters. Tui Pelotu is on the final year of his rookie deal. Man, time flies. The kid Mustafer, PJ Mustafer, they signed recently. Moro Ojomo didn't really play as a rookie. Noah Ellis this is his 3rd year on and off the team. And Thomas Booker was drafted by the Texans. They signed him last year. They want to take a look at him. They just don't have any depth that's done anything. So you're right. That's certainly a concern. They're loaded at off the ball linebacker. They drafted Hunt, who's more of a developmental player. We'll talk more about him on Monday's show with Mosher and I at 6 a.m. Eastern. But they've got the cool thing about that position for the first time, Andrew, and I don't know how long, they're actually going to have pretty good competition in training camp.
now. Oh yeah, and by the way, Adam, on J.O.X. Hunt, I spoke to his former head coach at Houston Christian this morning.
Oh wow,
So,
what did he say? What did he say?
Well, he had a lot of good things to say about him, but
Okay.
even as far as what he would tell folks who maybe are a little bit skeptical of him coming from Houston Christian, how his skill set's going to translate to the pro level. I'll have a story for that for Monday on InsideTheBirds.com.
Awesome, man. Awesome. J.Alex Hunt, an amazing story. Sometimes when you hear that the Eagles are interested in a guy, very interested, they want him not drafting, you go, oh, well, I guess it didn't work out. This is one guy that they didn't hide it, and it actually happened. But on your point, just be patient, folks. He's a project. It's going to take a while, but he's very, very intriguing, and I can't wait to read that interview. I'm curious. And then, of course, we had Jim Nagy on, the director of the Senior Bowl recently on our show. So it was good to talk to him about Hunt. He described inviting him and why he didn't and so forth. And then, in the secondary, yes, they drafted Mitchell and DeJean. Now we have to see where they line DeJean up this season. And, here's something. Think about this, Andrew. After the season is over, and we're going to assume Bradbury won't be back next year. In fact, look, he's on the roster now. They owe him a lot of money that's guaranteed. But Slay turns 34 in January. So the question is this. We know DeJean could play a variety of roles, and a lot of teams project him to play safety. Do the Eagles have Darius Slay's future replacement on the roster?
Well, it depends on how you view him, because I personally view Cooper DeJean as a safety who can also play some nickel. I think Quinyon Mitchell is the replacement. Now, who replaces James Bradbury? That becomes the question. I don't know that that's going to be Cooper. I think that he maybe was drafted to be the safety to complement C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who can also play nickel, by the way, because I know you have a conundrum now with all the different safety, Sidney Brown and Reed Blankenship as well. It's kind of a good problem to have.
So let's look at this question. The cornerback group now, they have a very interesting room. They have a bunch of developmental backups. Ricks was the real, I don't want to say star, but he was the guy who really did a great job. I know you were able to talk to him every week, which is your diary, which was awesome. But now you add to the room Isaiah Rodgers, who hasn't played football in nearly 2 years. We'll see how he does, and I know they're excited to have him. Tywan Mullen is back. He's more of a nickel. Tyler Hall's more of a nickel, who did some good things for the Raiders. Maddox is back. This is what they went from having no nickels to like 5 or 6.
Yeah, Mario Goodrich is still there. Don't forget him.
My bad.
McPherson.
This is crazy. Tristan McCollum, who's a safety.
Yep.
Kai Garner is still there.
Josh Jobe.
Yep. How do you see this group before you get out of here, I'm just curious, how do you see this group overall?
I am really fascinated at this defensive back position now. If you're looking at it in terms of corner, I
Mhm.
could easily see Slay, Mitchell, Isaiah Rogers, Maddox, Ringo, and Ricks as your six there. And then safety's the big four. If you want to go heavy there, maybe you go with a Mekhi Garner who can kind of give you some hybrid capabilities there. But I think they'll probably end up keeping six corners. I think Tyler Hall, who we thought was going to have a fair shot, and he still will, he's probably going to be the odd man out. And I don't know, Josh Jobe, they love him on special teams. I was
Mhm.
told that they view him as a quote unquote eliminator on special teams.
Okay.
So there's something to be said for that. But when you have this many bodies, you can only keep so many. The Eagles did keep 7 going into last season, but we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, we're and Ringo, who played a little bit, he had some good snaps and then some that didn't go as well. I know he's a fourth rounder, so those guys are tough to cut. But Ricks is over him.
Yeah.
Look, Ringo's really not an inside corner. He's an outside corner. Ricks obviously can do it. Rogers can do it, and they'll figure out where they're going to line him up once they get a good look at him. I don't know what Ringo's role is going to be, to be honest with you, at this point.
Probably the top backup corner, kind of like how Job entered the season last year and then he ended up losing that job.
I would
He
think
might
I would think Ricks, though. Wouldn't you think Ricks is over him?
uh I mean I personally think he is, and I think that the Eagles may look at it and say we have a fourth round pick. They're going to give him every opportunity to lose the job, but I think Ricks is the better player.
Yep.
They like Ricks. And but I ultimately think going into the season it probably will be Ricks. But I think in training camp you might see Ringo take on that top backup role, and then eventually have to move aside for Ricks. I think he's the better player.
That would be good competition, nevertheless, to see what that looks like, and that competition is always good. And so when you look at this roster, again, we're almost in May, but they're not playing games. We're not even at their mandatory camp. We're not even at where they're actually practicing with the coaches, watching where the coaches could actually coach them. The state of the roster. Is this a deep playoff roster? Because again, we've had the draft now, and most of free agency's dead. We know they could make some more moves. I'm sure they will before training camp. But where are you at with the state of this roster?
I think they can go toe to toe with almost anybody except the Kansas
Okay.
City Chiefs right now. And that all depends on how the young defensive backs are able to acclimate to the pro level. If they are, they're gonna be a force. They will be. You'll be able to contend with some of these high octane passing attacks. I think the 49ers and the Chiefs are probably I would put them above the Eagles, but the Eagles are right there.
Could they have a top three offense? I know it was somewhere in top 10, but it didn't, between 8 and 10. It didn't look that good, to be honest with you. We know how bad they crashed and burned on both sides of the football. Are we back to seeing an offense that's elite? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think Saquon Barkley is going to be the piece that puts it back
Yep.
into the elite level, having that balance and that different dimension to the offense. Hopefully, they use him as a receiver because he's really good in that area. You would hate to see them kind of waste him like they did with DeAndre Swift, but yeah, I think that's an elite offense.
All right, good stuff, Andrew. We cannot wait to watch your stuff at insidethebirds.com and read it, and read that interview on Jalen Hunt's head coach from Houston Baptist, right? Or was it Christian?
Houston Christian. It used to be Houston
Right,
Baptist.
right. I know
Yeah.
Jim Nagy told us that because we had not heard of that school. Oh, Houston Baptist, sure. But the former safety out of Cornell at Jalen Hunt. So we look forward to that and all your stuff at insidethebirds.com. So for Andrew DiCecco, I'm Adam Caplan. We'll see you next time.